Good morning, everyone. It's Tracy Prachi here with the RCAW. Thanks for coming to our Lunch and Learn today. We're really excited to have Jennifer Richards with Safety Matters Training Institute here, and she's going to be talking to us about heat-related illness. And afterwards, we'll be able to send cards out to you for participating today. And I've got a handout that I will also email so you can educate your staff. And in a few weeks, you'll also be able to find this on our YouTube channel, so you can use this for training purposes as well. So as you have questions, type them in the Q&A box when we get to the end. I will read off all the questions to Jennifer, and she can answer them for you. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to her right now and let her get started.
Thank you, Tracy. Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer Richards. I'm the owner of Safety Matters and Safety Matters Training Institute. Just a quick summary of what we are and what we do. We are a third-party safety consulting firm and an open enrollment training center that focuses on workplace safety and health services and trainings. Our sole goal is to prevent accidents by being proactive, and also helping our clients be in compliance with labor and industries and all the various documentation requirements, like weekly safety meetings, site inspections, accident investigations, trainings, and so forth. We've been around since about 2008, and we have a staff of about, it varies between 15 and 20 these days, that we basically roam the I-5 corridor doing weekly safety meetings, inspections, assistance with labor and industries, and sometimes on-site safety trainings. But with COVID these days, most of our trainings are being held at our training center in South Seattle, which is in the Georgetown area. We've been an RCAW member for a while now, and our list of our different services and trainings offered are on the website, and we do give an RCAW discount for any RCAW members, just so you know. Our subject today is going to be heat-related illness. Labor and Industries requires that all employees that work in an outdoor environment where there's the potential for heat-related illness exposure, they have to be trained annually. In my opinion, this annual training is something that could absolutely be administered in-house. You really don't need a third-party consultant to come out, or even a certified trainer. It's a lot of common sense stuff. As Tracy mentioned, she has a handout that basically outlines the training requirements and written program requirements for heat-related illness. And she's happy to share that. And I will send her this PowerPoint when we're done today. And you can customize this. You can make it company specific. It's in very generic form as we're viewing it today. But feel free to do whatever you want with it as far as customizing it with your company logos or things like that. You could also probably shorten it a bit for your annual training requirement. This has to be done basically May through September is the guidelines of when this has to occur. So I would get on top of this and probably start planning, the first couple weeks in May to get this information out to all of your employees. You don't necessarily have to issue a card, but I would keep some kind of an attendance roster and have them, sign in on the rosters as proof of training. Some of your GCs might require you to show this as proof of training. If L&I shows up on your site between May and September, they will most likely ask for this, for documentation of heat-related illness training. So it is an annual requirement. It does expire per the state. So any of you who are attending today, I will get the list from Tracy, and we will mail the cards to Tracy. They will have a 1 year expiration, and Tracy will get the cards out to you folks. Okay, with that, let's get started. So we're going to cover types of heat-related illnesses, common signs and symptoms, hierarchy of controls, precautions to take to prevent HRI, which is heat-related illness. You'll hear me say HRI a lot, which means heat-related illness. The importance of acclimating, hydration, emergency procedures, and what is in a heat index. So what is the law? The Washington Administrative Code basically says that employers that have employees that could potentially be exposed at or above temperatures listed in Table 1, which we'll see later on, have to provide training. So they address their outdoor heat exposure safety program in their accident prevention program, or APP. Encourage employees to frequently consume water, and you have to provide water. Now, if you're a general contractor, you don't have to provide drinking water for all of your subcontractors. But if you're a subcontractor, you do have to make sure that you have enough drinking water available for your employees anytime that pretty much period. You know, employers are required to provide drinking water. You just have to increase the amount of water supply typically in the hotter months, because we're encouraged to consume more water. And then employers have to monitor their own personal factors for heat-related illnesses. Again, you know, how many employees do we have versus how much water we need to have available? You know, what kind of tasks are going to be performed during the hotter days, and that sort of thing. Okay. And then the general requirements, again, are to provide annual training, increase the amount of water, and make sure you're prepared to respond appropriately if there are signs and symptoms. So what is heat-related illness? It occurs when the body is not able to lose enough heat to balance the heat generated by physical work and external heat sources. Weather is the primary external heat source for outdoor workers. So again, kind of common sense stuff, but something that we all need to be aware of. So what are the different types of heat-related illnesses? There's the heat rash, which you can see a photo there, is kind of a reddish, bumpy rash. It can be itchy, happens in hot, humid environments where sweat can't evaporate. Sweat ducts to the skin become blocked or swell. The best treatment is to have somebody rest in a cool place and keep your skin dry and clean. So those are some of the earlier stages of potential heat exposures, getting a heat rash. Fainting or becoming dizzy. I would say becoming dizzy is an early sign, but once somebody faints, that to me is pretty serious and not unheard of, but more rare than obviously feeling dizzy or pale, sweaty skin, a decreased pulse. Blood can pool in the legs, and so the less blood goes to the brain due to low blood pressure, which could, be a sign or symptom. Again, same type of treatment, move to a cool shaded area. It says lie down. In my experience, I don't encourage people to necessarily lie down, but maybe get them comfortable leaning up against a tree or a wall or something and elevate their legs. We all know our bodies better than somebody that's trying to help us. And so if an individual does not want to lie down, I wouldn't force that. I would more have them just sit, lean up against a wall, and try to elevate their legs. Get them rehydrated, offer them some water. Don't have them guzzle water, but just take small sips, even maybe just swish it around in their mouth a little bit and, swallow small amounts until they start to feel a little bit better. But guzzling water can often cause other issues like vomiting and choking and that sort of thing. And then obviously monitor their vital signs. Heat exhaustion is due from the loss of fluids and salt. Again, same type of symptoms, weak, dizzy, or feel nauseous. Skin can become clammy, complexion is pale or flushed. heavy sweating. Again, treatment's the same, rest in a cool place, lie down, maybe loosen their clothing a little bit, remove a full body harness if they have a harness on. Apply cool wet cloths if you can, or ice packs from your first aid kit. And you can use an electrolyte solution like Gatorade or Powerade. But water is fine here as well. In more severe cases, victims might vomit or lose consciousness. If somebody faints or loses consciousness, it is immediately a 911 call. Don't even second guess this, guys. Even if we had an issue, and I'll just share a story with you. This was quite a few years ago, and it actually was a roofer. We had a roofer who came down at break and was feeling signs of heat exposure. And he was, fatigued, and said he was super thirsty and just didn't feel good. And while he was on break, he passed out. But it was well, he lost consciousness. It was very brief. He came to almost immediately, and the crew was like, "Hey guy, are you okay? Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll be fine. It's fine. Let me just drink some water, maybe take a little bit longer break." And that's exactly what he did. He drank some water, rested for a little bit longer than normal, started feeling better, went up on the roof, and within about an hour or so of being in the hot sun with a hard hat on and all that heat rising to his head and not being able to escape, he fainted again while on the roof and fell off the roof. That's the bad news. The good news is his personal fall arrest system worked, and he was arrested before he fell. But then there's all the other complications that come along with that. So I would never ignore serious signs or symptoms, or if somebody actually faints as a result of anything, whether it's a medical condition. It doesn't have to be heat related. If an employee loses consciousness, do not let them go back to work. Call 911 or transport once they come to. That would be kind of a case by case scenario, but have them evaluated. That is not something to mess around with. Okay. Heat cramps can be acute, painful, involuntary muscle contraction, painful muscle cramps, again, caused by loss of salt when sweating, again, due to result of from lack of hydration. So again, stop activity, drink electrolytes or water, massage the muscles, stretch. And severe cases could require some kind of an intravenous saline solution, which again would be obviously administered by a doctor. So I wouldn't ignore heat cramps. Don't ignore, don't ignore any signs or symptoms, obviously. But when we start getting into these serious signs like heat cramping and dizziness and things like that, make sure that you're following proper protocol. Heat stroke is extreme. The body fails to regulate its own temperature. Your core temperature rises. It increases your heart rate and decreases blood pressure. A victim could stop sweating. Symptoms are hot, dry skin, confusion, convulsions, or loss of consciousness. Again, call 911 immediately. Keep the victim cool and apply cool, wet cloths. Monitor temperature, but do not give fluids. Don't give an unconscious person anything orally under any circumstances, but definitely try to cool their outer temperature. There was a time on the LNI website that it said to immerse the heat stroke victim in a tub of cool water. I don't think we typically have bathtubs conveniently available full of cool water out on the job site. So that's probably not going to be an option, but wet cloths, again, elevating their legs, fanning them, putting them in the shade, anything you can to lower their body temperature, and absolutely call 911. Really severe cases could result in seizures, a coma, vomiting, and or diarrhea. Call 911, guys. I cannot stress this enough. Another thing that's going to come up this year is the mask issue. Obviously, wearing a mask workers are going to get hotter. Their temperature could rise quicker. Breathing is a little bit more difficult. So we're adding a new complication with this hotter weather coming up with the COVID issue and having to wear masks. So that's just an added layer of caution that we're all going to have to pay attention to. Okay. Heat can obviously cause accidents due to decreased strength and increased fatigue, reduced comprehension and our ability to retain information. Operational procedures can be compromised, things like forklift operating aerial lifts, scissor lifts, working on a steeper roof, things like that. So, we want to pay attention to maybe doing strenuous activities in cooler parts of the day and that sort of thing. Sweat can cause our safety glasses to fog up, our goggles to fog up, face shields to fog up, things like that. Okay. So what are some engineering controls? General violation, if you have air conditioning or fans or, again, trying to get into the shade and that sort of thing, that would be your first hierarchy of control. And then we have administrative controls. Again, like I mentioned earlier, schedule heavy work for a cooler time of year. I was a carpenter for about 12 years before I got into safety. And I remember one summer it was really hot. And we literally started work at 5:30 in the morning to try to, do the more strenuous tasks earlier in the day. And then we obviously got off earlier so that we weren't working in the main heat of the day, which is between around 3:30 to 5:30 in the evening. With noise restrictions, that's not always an option to start that early, but if it is, it's something to consider. Allow more frequent breaks or longer rest periods, reduce the physical demand, allow time for workers to become conditioned to the heat, which is, again, acclimating and possibly alternating the staff. So if you have some options where somebody could be cutting on the ground in the shade and then while other workers are up on the roof where they're in the full sunshine, maybe swap them out every 30 minutes or so or every hour, depending on the situation, and see if you can't alternate your workers a little bit. All right, stay hydrated. That's probably the number one thing, guys. Drink a lot of water throughout the day. Don't guzzle a gallon at break and then nothing until lunch. Drink a little bit of water all day long. That is the ideal way to stay hydrated. Electrolyte balanced fluids, if you sweat a lot, again, the Gatorades and the Powerades, I'm not a huge fan of those because of all the sugar, but anything with electrolytes is helpful. They do have water now that has enhanced electrolytes. Drink at least 1 cup of fluid every 15 to 20 minutes and avoid caffeine and alcohol. Surprise, no drinking on the job, guys, not even in cool weather. No booze and avoid caffeine. Okay. So hats can help. Hard hats, unfortunately, I feel like they hold the heat in a lot of ways, but they do make these they almost look like a bandana that you can dip in water and freeze overnight and put those underneath your hard hat. Those were things that I remember the general contractor that I worked for when I was out in the field, they gave us those as part of our PPE during those summer months, and that was helpful. I used to take a bandana and just cool it, get it wet and put it around my neck. I mean, there's all kind of options out there. Cooling vests, reflective clothing. So there are some options for, using cooling agents or PPE. So obviously common sense, pace your work, slow down a little bit, take extra breaks, as we've mentioned. If the humidity is high, which is often the case in the greater Puget Sound, so taking more breaks, I know that can be, a strain on productivity, but it sure beats having to deal with somebody, you know, fainting as a result of working too hard and not getting enough breaks. Lighter clothing. I remember when I first got into construction, some of I call them our veteran workers or seasoned workers. They would always wear like long sleeved, light cotton, light colored, or even linen, you know, button down shirts. And I'd be out there, you know, with my t-shirt on and roll up my sleeves as much as I could, you know, thinking that, you know, that was a better way to dress. Well, it didn't take me but a couple of summers to realize that there was something to be said for covering more of your skin with, again, a light, breathable cotton or linen material, not polyester, not wool or anything like that, obviously, but the less skin that's exposed, the better. If you're, you know, covering it again with a light, breathable material. So the other issue is these high visibility vests that we're all required to wear. That can obviously be a problem, but we can't really get away with that unless we could get away with like a class 2 long sleeve breathable t-shirt versus the, you know, heavier polyester vests. That's an option. And again, plenty of fluids, water, rest, and shade. That is our friend for fighting heat-related illness. You may need assistance immediately. Make sure all your foremen have to have current CPR first aid cards. That is the rule for construction. It used to be that it was dependent on how many people you had on a job. If you had like, don't quote me, but like 11 or more, you had to have one person that has had a CPR first aid card, or maybe it was 20 or more. That isn't how the rule reads now. All foremen must carry a current CPR first aid card, whether they're the foreman for a crew of 2 or the crew of 20. Every foreman has to have a current card. I encourage all workers to have a current CPR first aid card, but the law says all foremen. Provide support in taking the employee to a cool shaded area. Keep the employee calm, generally have them lie down with their feet elevated. Again, provide fluids, apply wet, cool cloths, and call 911 immediately if you're questioning it at all. Do you think this individual needs medical attention? Don't second guess yourselves, guys. Just call. It's not worth it. You know, I'm not saying that every single situation where signs and symptoms of potential heat exhaustion or heat exposure occur that you must call 911, but use your best judgment. And if you're questioning it, I would err on the cautious side and call 911. Okay, the heat index chart is developed by the U.S. National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA. It's a single value that takes both temperature and relative humidity into account. So for employees working in outdoor hot weather, both temperature and relative humidity will affect how they feel. So the relative humidity is a measure of the amount of moisture in the air. So again, you know, if you're in Nevada or the desert and there's very little humidity, the heat feels very different than up here in the Pacific Northwest because we have higher humidity. Okay, so why does humidity matter? The evaporation of sweat from the skin is one of the ways the human body cools itself on a hot day. Excuse me, I had to get a drink of water. Sweat does not evaporate as quickly when the air is moist as it does in a drier climate. So as a result, we feel hotter, sweat evaporates rapidly, and can lead to severe dehydration. I remember being in a comedy club years ago. I don't know if you guys remember, but we had like a week long where we were over 100 degrees, maybe like 101 for 5 or 6 days in a row. And I was at a comedy club one night, and the comedian was from like Arizona or I don't know, somewhere hot, Florida, I can't remember. And she was like, Oh my goodness. She just could not believe how freaked out we got because we hit over 100 degrees. I think some job sites even shut down. But what people don't understand is when we get into the, 100 plus degrees in the Pacific Northwest, the humidity is so different. And so it feels so much hotter. And of course, she just thought we were all a bunch of wusses, but she was making a lot of jokes about it. But, it is very different when the humidity is high. So this kind of shows the heat index chart, um, and what we need to post on in a safety bulletin board during the hotter months, again, is why we need to talk about heat related illness and do the annual training. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but you can see that less than 91 degrees is a lower caution or lower risk level, and just some basic heat safety and planning. That's probably the most common for us. We might get into the 91 to 103 degrees where we have to implement precautions and heighten our awareness. You get into the 103 to 115 or greater than 115 for us in the outdoor environment is highly unlikely. But obviously, if you do, you're going to even add more precautions and even maybe some triggers for aggressive protective measures. I have worked in hotter areas as a consultant where they had shade shacks and misting stations. And I mean, they were given breaks like every few minutes. And some activities were actually shut down, flagging operations, hot tar activities. I apologize, you guys. I don't know how to turn this stuff off. Hot tar triggers, flagging operations, concrete finishing, where it was just too hot and they just would cancel the day. That's highly unlikely again for us, but something to consider. So, what do you need to do? You need to develop a heat illness prevention plan for work based on the heat index. So, make sure you have a written program, which the handout that Tracy has can be customized as part of your written program. I'm happy to provide a written program that you can also customize that reflects the Washington Administrative Code. The training and providing the water and the more frequent breaks and things like that is probably the most important thing, but we do have to have that written documentation as well. You can go to the Labor and Industries website and there's sample programs that you can customize as well. Track the worksite index daily, train employees, and review and revise the plan throughout the summer. So make sure you're keeping everything current and you're looking at any revisions that might be necessary if the days do get hotter. So this kind of gives different levels as far as lower, moderate, high, and very high or extreme. As far as, providing supplies, emergency planning, acclimating workers, modified work schedules, training, and then anything that you need to look at as far as psychological, visual, and verbal monitoring. So these are all just, planning guidelines that whoever you task to administer this is paying attention to it, whether it be the foreman, if you have a safety manager, or a lead or whoever, monitor water, making sure that you don't run out of water. You're looking at, scheduling more frequent breaks, alternating worker tasks. Like I said earlier, if somebody's cutting in the shade and they can maybe take a break and go up on the roof for a while and get somebody off of the roof and they do the cutting for a while, things like that. If a worker develops signs and symptoms that are mild and you put them in the shade and they don't pass, they don't lose consciousness and they drink some water and they start feeling better, you can let them go back to work, but my advice would be don't put them in the direct sunlight. Don't put them up on the roof. Maybe have them stay down off of the roof and pick up scraps that day and work on general housekeeping or be the person that is cutting, or whatever. But I probably would be really careful about putting somebody who has expressed concerns that doesn't feel well, I would probably try to avoid putting them back on the roof if at all possible. But again, that's kind of a judgment call and a case-by-case scenario. So important considerations, the heat index chart for shaded conditions and light winds. So again, full sunshine can increase the heat index values by up to 15 degrees. Heat index could be higher than listed in the table if you're in the direct sunlight and there's no breeze. Strenuous work or the use of heavy or specialized PPE can also have an additional effect. Again, if you had to wear chaps because you're operating a chainsaw or a face shield with safety glasses, or, of course, most of us always have to have a hard hat on now. And so things like that, pay attention to if PPE is complicating matters and any other extra measures that may be necessary. When it says develop the visual monitoring, use the buddy system. Train your employees to, watch each other's back. Sometimes it can sneak up on us and we don't even really aren't aware of it and we don't see it internally. But if somebody's really showing, laborious breathing, things like that, train your employees to kind of, again, watch each other time. Again, it doesn't have to be this full PowerPoint. You could definitely shorten it, but make sure that you do a little bit more than just a safety meeting topic. So with that, Tracy, do we have any questions?
I do not see any questions at this time. Does anyone have any questions? If you want to type them in the Q&A box right now. Doesn't appear that we do. So thank you, Jennifer. That was awesome. A lot of information. For all of you that participated, I will get the PowerPoint presentation as well as the added info out to you. We've also recorded this, and in a couple weeks it'll be up on our YouTube channel, so you could use that for training as well. And then I just wanted to remind everybody that our next Lunch and Learn is on April 27th, and it's going to be John Ariello from GAF talking about their certified programs and a lot of new things that are coming out. And we have our virtual biannual this Thursday, and our Sporting Clays tournament is a week from Friday. So if you need more information about either of those events, just go to our website at rcaw.com and click on events, and all the information and ways to sign up is there. And one other thing, you can now download the RCAW app from the App Store for iPhone or for Android. It's up and it's ready to go, so that's pretty exciting. So again, thank you, Jennifer. We really appreciate all your information, and I will get the participants over to her so she can get the cards to me, and then I will get them out to you guys as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you all for attending, and thank you, Jennifer, again, and we look forward to seeing you all in a couple weeks. Take care.
Okay, sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye.